so in today's video, we're going to read an article from CNN.com. Some of the advanced vocabularies and phrases that we're going to learn today include imminent, or the word trajectory, or what it means to shift your attention away from something, and many more. In this lesson, you're going to learn advanced words and phrases, practice your reading and listening comprehension skills, and improve your pronunciation. You'll also have a chance to repeat after me so you can practice speaking English with the correct pronunciation. Now, if you're ready, let's go to my computer and let's get started. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get started. Let's read the headline first. Okay, the headline reads, "The U.S. economy bounced back last quarter after shrinking in the first half of the year." Right, now let's take a look at this word, bounced back. So bounce back here means to recover from a difficult situation. Now we use this to talk about a difficult situation that we encountered and we managed to overcome it. So we can use this in other situations. For example, let's take a look at the sports. Let's take a look at sports. Say the team had a rough start, but they managed to bounce. Maybe in the first half of the game, the team had a very difficult start, struggling, but they managed to overcome that difficult situation. You can also use this in a medical situation. For example, medical. Last month, I had a major surgery. So this major surgery is the difficult situation. Okay, but I easily bounced. I easily recovered from that difficult situation. We can also use this in for finance. For instance, you had a financial crisis. For finance, you can say something like, after years of financial setbacks, I managed to bounce by learning how to properly manage my finances. I learned how to properly manage my money. So I learned how to budget and all that stuff. So after years of financial setbacks, so this financial setback here is your difficult situation. So you manage to recover or bounce back by how? Learning how to manage your finances. Okay, next, let's go to the next word. We have shrinking. Okay, so shrinking here just simply means to decrease in size. So we can also use this as a verb, meaning to shrink, to decrease in size. We can also conjugate this, since it's a verb, we can conjugate it according to its form. So if it's in the past form, we say shrunk. And for the future, will shrink. Okay, so here is an example. I'll just put it probably right here. Don't wash. So you can use this to warn people, like don't wash your clothes in hot water because it will shrink. Okay, so don't wash your clothes in hot water because it will shrink. It will decrease in size. It will shrink. So don't wash your clothes in hot water. So in the past form, my clothes shrunk because I washed it in hot water. Or in future tense here, so don't wash your clothes in hot water because it will shrink. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, now let's read the first paragraph. Gross domestic product, the broadest measure of economic activity, rose by an annualized rate of 2.6% during the third quarter, according to initial estimates released Thursday by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. That's a turnaround from a decline of 1.6% in the first quarter of the year and negative 0.6% in the second. And now let's take a look at this word, gross domestic product. So this is otherwise known as GDP. So this is abbreviated as GDP. When you abbreviate something, you take the first letter of each word to shorten it. So here we have the first letter, G, domestic, D, and so abbreviating something is quite common in the English language because they wanted to shorten it. So for example, the United States of America is abbreviated as UK. So for abbreviation, if you see GDP, if you see GDP, we say it stands for. So if you ask a question, if you don't know what the abbreviation is, you may ask a question. So you can say, what does stand what does it stand for? So GDP stands for gross domestic product. Okay. So the broadest measure of economic activity. So the broadest measure of economic activity rose. Okay, so rose just simply means to rise, meaning to increase by an annualized rate of 2.6% during the third quarter. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about periodicals. Okay, third quarter. So this is a periodical. Periodicals are daily, monthly, bi-weekly, quarterly, and yearly or annually, we say. Okay, so here daily, of course, it's every day, weekly, every week, monthly, every month, bi-weekly is every 2 weeks. So in other countries, they use the word fortnight, once a fortnight, meaning once every 2 weeks. Quarterly is 3 months, and yearly, obviously, it's every year. Okay, so let's take a look at quarters in this one, quarterly. Okay, so we have the first quarter. So the first quarter of the year. So we have January, February, supposed to be capitalized. I'll just say Jan, Feb, March. Okay, so this is the first quarter of the year, the first 3 months of the year. Now we have second quarter, which, March. Okay, so second quarter, which is April, May, June. And we have the third quarter, July, August, September. And the last quarter, which is, of course, the fourth quarter, this is October, November, and December. Okay, so these are the 4 quarters. So in a real life example, like let's take a look at how often do you receive your salary? So you could simply reply by, I receive it on, it refers to your salary. I receive it on a monthly basis, or I receive it bi-weekly. I receive my salary bi-weekly, meaning every 2 weeks. So I receive it on a monthly basis. I receive it weekly, every Friday. All right, now let's use this in a sentence. So in business, we often talk about sales. So usually there's a huge spike in sales in the fourth quarter. So we can say we need to stock up on inventory. This is for e-commerce. We need to stock up on inventory, meaning to say we need to have a lot of inventory in the third quarter. So third. So we need to stock up on inventory in the third quarter, meaning around July, August, or September, because consumer demand increases in the fourth quarter. Yeah, so we need to stock up. We need to have more inventory in the third quarter during July, August, and September, because during fourth quarter, October, November, and December, there tends to be an increase in consumer demand. So there's more buying happening in the fourth quarter. However, sales tend to slow down in the first quarter. Buying spree is pretty much done in the fourth quarter. People have bought their Christmas presents for themselves, for their families, some friends. So sales, they already spent all their money. So sales tend to slow down in the first quarter of the year. So meaning January, February, and March. So this happens to be the slow quarter of each. Right, now let's go to the second paragraph. Okay, so first let's read together. President Joe Biden on Thursday hailed the GDP rebound, describing the report as further evidence that our economic recovery is continuing to move forward. While the economic growth underscores that the United States is not currently in a recession, economists caution that the latest GDP report doesn't mean one isn't imminent. Much of the gains were fueled by a rebalancing of imports and exports, with fewer foreign goods shipped to the United States as consumers shifted their attention away from pandemic-fueled spending on sofas, bikes, and other durable goods and turned to travel and dining out. Okay, let's take a look at some vocabularies. Here we have, first we have economic recovery. So this is a business collocation. So this is a stage following a recession, followed by the period of so what happens during an economic recovery? What happens is the GDP, as you remember earlier, that's the gross product, stands for gross domestic product. So GDP grows. The GDP grows. What else happens here? So income rises, and of course the unemployment rate decreases. So this is what happens during an economic recovery. After a period of that recession, there is a period of improvement. Some of the improvement that happens, GDP grows, the income rises, and the unemployment rate decreases. And that is your economic growth. So economic growth, that is where the GDP grows, income rises, and all that. So for example, following the pandemic, our country is showing signs of economic growth because tourism is open, people can go back to work, and businesses are. And now let's take a look at some other words here. So let's take a look at caution. Okay. Caution. Economist, caution. The cautioned here is a verb. So this means to warn. So this is a fancy way of saying be careful. Okay, for instance, you could use this in daily conversation. You should exercise caution when using an electric razor. You should be careful. You should exercise caution when you're using an electric razor because it makes you bleed. All right, and this can also be used as an adjective, cautious. Okay, so for instance, you're warning your friend or your family to how they post something online. So you could say something like, you should be cautious. Tell my mom this. You should be cautious about what you post online. Okay, so following reasons. You should be cautious about what you post online. Probably someone would steal your personal information. You'll get spam. So you have to be very cautious about what you post online. You should be very, very careful. Okay, and the next word we have imminent. Imminent here is an adjective. This is used to describe something is something's about to happen. So for example, earlier I already cautioned you about the imminent dangers of posting your personal info online. Just say info online. Okay, so I already cautioned you the imminent dangers of posting your personal information online. You didn't listen to me, so your information got leaked online, and now all your money in your bank account is wiped out. Right? So this is imminent. Imminent dangers. I already warned you the imminent dangers that is possibly going to happen if you did this or that. Now, this is the consequences. Right? Okay, let's take a look at this expression. Consumers shifted their attention away from the pandemic fueled spending. Right, so shifting your attention away from something means to change your focus away. To change your focus away from, to distract you. For example, the government shifted its attention away from the fight against. So the government shifted its attention away. They changed their focus away from the fight against crime. So they shifted or they changed their focus to something different. Okay, so it could be anything. So they focused primarily on economic recovery instead of fighting against criminals. So a personal example of mine is with all the things that are happening in the world today. So I try to shift my attention away from all those negatives and try to focus on positives. Okay, now on to the next paragraph. Okay, let's read together. Consumer spending grew by 1.4% on an annualized basis, which, though better than expected, marks a slowdown from the first two quarters, quarter one, quarter two. Excluding the more volatile categories, the trajectory for growth looks weak. Jeffrey Roach, chief economist for LPL Financial, said in a statement. A deteriorating housing market and nagging inflation, along with an aggressive Federal Reserve, put the economy on unsure footing for 2023. Okay, take a look at some words here. So we have here volatile. This is an adjective. This is a very common word for investments. Okay, for example, the stock market is highly volatile. So you're simply describing something that is very unstable, that keeps changing rapidly. Very rapid change. It's very unpredictable that way. And of course, the very good example of that is the stock market or the crypto. You can use this in conversation. Like, I'm very scared of putting my money. Putting my money is a native way of saying investing. So I'm very afraid of putting my money in the stock market, or I'm very afraid of investing in crypto because it is highly volatile. I'll just lose my money. The stock markets are pretty bad when you're trading because it is highly volatile. So we could say this as trading is very risky. You often hear this when people are saying, oh, it's very, very risky stock trading, because the stock market is highly volatile. The stock market is highly volatile. It's very, very unpredictable. It's rapidly changing. So before you know it, the values are different. So you can also use this to warn someone. For example, be careful when you're investing or you're putting money in crypto because it's highly volatile. You might lose all your money. Okay, so let's take a look at the next word. We have the trajectory for growth looks weak, or trajectory of growth looks strong if it's it. So the trajectory is a movement. A movement, it could be upward or it could be a downward trajectory. So again, trajectory means the movement. The movement of something could be upward or it could be downward. Okay, so the upward trajectory, this is the word that goes with trajectory. The upward trajectory of blah, blah, blah. So the upward trajectory of blah, blah, blah. So let's use upward trajectory in a sentence. So for example, every year, about 83 million, or we say, every year about 83 million babies born. The upward trajectory is expected to continue for the next 50 years. So the upward trajectory of the population. So every year there's about 83 million babies born, and this upward trajectory, there's this movement or this increase is still expected to continue for the next 50 more years. And obviously the opposite of upward trajectory is the downward trajectory. The downward trajectory or the downward movement. So for example, when we're talking about population, we could say on the other hand, yeah, because we were talking about earlier, 83 million babies are born each year. Now, on the other hand, Japan is experiencing a downward trajectory of its population. Japan is capital, it's proper. So, upward trajectory, every year there's an increase, but downward trajectory, on the other hand, Japan is experiencing a downward movement, decrease of its population. All right, now let's take a look at the other words. Okay, so we have deteriorating housing market. So obviously, I think this is an adjective, a verb, or what, or noun. What do you think this is? So deteriorating here is an adjective. So this simply describes something that becomes progressively worse. A deteriorating housing. So it's getting worse and worse over time. Okay, so this is also very common in healthcare. So deteriorating health. So you can describe the health of that person as getting worse, getting progressively worse over time. So for example, in healthcare, so we have deteriorating diseases. Okay, an example of this is arthritis. So if you do not know what arthritis is, it's the inflammation or your joints, like your joints are swelling. Makes it really painful. So it's considered a deteriorating disease because arthritis worsens as you age. Okay, next word we have a nagging inflation. Okay, so again, just like deteriorating, this is also an adjective. So in this context, it means persistent. The inflation is persistent. Nagging inflation is persistent. You can also use this to describe pain. It's a instead of saying persistent pain, we can say I have this nagging pain in my joints because of your deteriorating disease like arthritis. I have this nagging pain that's been ongoing for many, many, many years. So I need to see a doctor. So nagging. So the second meaning of nagging is it is a person constantly harasses a person to do something. So this is a person who constantly harasses a person to do something. A very good example of that is your parents. So they are nagging, a nagging mom. So that's an adjective, a nagging mom. So nagging describes the mom who is a person who constantly harasses you to probably clean your room, harasses you to do the chores. So you could say something like, oh, I can't wait to move out. I want to, I want to get away from my nagging parents. Okay, so I can't wait to move out. I can't wait to get out of here. I want to get away from my nagging parents. So probably it's because they keep nagging you to your room, nagging you to get a job, or nagging you to study, or nagging you for whatever they want you to do. So you say, "Oh, I can't wait to move out. I want to get away from my." They're very annoying, etc., etc. And lastly, we have unsure footing. Okay, so put the economy on unsure footing for 23. So unsure footing just simply means uncertainty. We're not certain. We don't know what's going to happen in the year 23. So it's uncertain. Okay, next paragraph. Let's read this together. Oh, back to back quarterly, every 3 months. Well, back to back quarterly conditions, like we saw in the first half of the year, meet one technical definition of a recession. Economists note that a true recession is a deeper, longer, broader decline in economic activity. During the first 2 quarters of this year, the labor market was hot. Consumer spending was growing and business investment remained strong. But just as a decline in GDP in the first half of the year did not appropriately reflect that robust activity, the surge in the third quarter masks a potential slowdown. The biggest variables for the past 9 months have been net exports and inventories, two categories that ordinarily don't have such an outsized influence, doesn't have relative or significant influence. Okay, now let's take a look at this word. Okay, so back to back here simply means non-stop, continuous, non-stop, back to back quarterly, control. So here, back to back in real life, we can talk about our job. So for example, if you're so busy, I have more tasks. They're giving me more tasks back to back, non-stop. They're giving me more tasks back to back, non-stop. So I don't have enough time to rest. Right. So you could also say this when you're at school. We could say my teacher gave us homework back to back. Or we could use this at school, like for example, my teacher gave us homework back to non-stop. My teacher gave us homework back to back to back to back. It means non-stop and continuous without stopping. You can also use this for your work. You could say like, my boss gave me so much task back to back to back, non-stop. And don't have time to even catch my breath. Well, next we have the word hot simply means something that is popular. You can also use this to talk about something that's quite trendy. For example, it is a hot topic on social media. So that hot topic could be something that went viral on social media. So it's a popular topic that people are now talking about. So it's a hot topic on social media. Okay, so you can also use this for, like, let's say something that's quite trendy, like fashion. It's the hottest trend. Flare pants are the hottest fashion trend. You can also talk about, you can also use hot for trend. So the hottest trend of the year. So for instance, this new skincare is the hottest trend of the year. Okay, so next let's take a look at robust activity. So the word robust is an adjective. So robust is an adjective. So this is used to describe something strong and rich. So robust is something strong. You can also use this for food. For example, I love the taste of robust coffee in the morning. I really love the taste of robust coffee in the morning. It's strong, and the flavor is rich. Another example for food, I love the robust mixture of spices, fish, and cocoa. I love the robust mixture of spices, fish, and coconut milk in this dish. Just phenomenally delicious. Okay, now let's take a look at the word surge. Okay, so the surge is also another way to say increase. So surge can be used as both a noun and a verb. The surge in the third quarter. Okay, so a surge is an increase in something. So this means sudden, powerful increase. Sudden, it's powerful, increase. Surge. Okay, so commonly we could about prices. For example, right now it's so worrying because of the surge in oil prices. Okay, so a surge, an increase in the prices of oil. So right now it's very worrying because of the surge in oil prices. And in turn, it also influenced the surge of food prices. That is why we have CHEN. Okay, now let's read the next paragraph. In the first 6 months of the year, the trade deficit widened as reliance on imports grew as U.S. manufacturing couldn't meet the surging demands and increase demand for goods, and businesses' inventory levels were negatively impacted by snarls in the supply chain. However, in the third quarter, trade and inventories improved. Supply chain issues are fading, and the trade gap has narrowed as consumer spending has shifted toward services and away from goods, leading to fewer imports. The latest report, which showed a decline in imports coupled with decreases in housing investments and a slowdown in consumer spending, is a reflection of a broader easing of demand, Patterson said. That's something the Fed has been hoping to see as it enacted a series of blockbuster rate hikes aimed at bringing down historically high inflation. This is another sign that Fed policy is having the intended impact set. Okay, so let's take a look at the word deficit. Okay, a deficit simply means a shortage, a loss, a deficiency. So for example, we spent $300. This is our expenses. And we got back, or our revenue is $200. So this is the revenue, or rev, I'll just say rev. But so we have a deficiency or a deficit of $100. Where did this money go? So there's probably an error in finance, doing profit and loss. So this is what you call the deficit, the deficiency, the loss, or the shortage. Okay, so next up here we have import. Okay, so let's take a look at the word import and export. Import and export. Okay, so import and export. So import is the bringing of goods and services into the country. We call them imported goods. Call them imported goods. Imported goods, like for instance, here in my country, we import berries because berries do not grow here in our country, so we have to import it from countries, meaning to say we have to buy it from other countries. We call that imported goods. And now the opposite of that is if our country is producing a lot of the specific products, for instance, our country produces a lot of rice or bananas, mangoes, etc. So we export these things to other countries and we call those exported goods. Exported goods. Okay, so that's the difference between import and export. The next one is coupled with, that simply is together with, as a couple so meaning together. Next one, we have rate hikes. And just like surge, hike also means increase. So that's an increase. Okay, so next we have the word historically high inflation. So historically here is an which means based on history, which is based on history, historical records. This is found to be the highest inflation. Historically here is the verb, high is the adjective, and inflation is noun. Now let's go to the last paragraph. Let's read together. Despite the swing in the headline GDP, conditions on the ground for consumers haven't changed much, and concerns for an economic downturn remain. I do think there's roughly a 50-50 probability of recession in 2023, said Gus Foucher, Senior Vice President and Chief Economist at the PNC Financial Services Group. We are starting to see job growth slow. Housing is becoming more of a drag. Consumer spending growth, although that's holding up, is also slowing. And there's a potential that as interest rates move even higher through the rest of this year, that we could see a recession sometime here. Okay, now let's take a look at the word drag. Okay, drag is actually a slang word for something to express something that's very unpleasant. An unpleasant situation, here's an example. We could say, like, for instance, your internet is not properly. It's slow, very, very slow. So you call up customer service to ask them to get a technician to come by to help you fix the problem. However, customer service takes too long to respond and you are being put on hold for hours. So it's a very unpleasant situation. So you could simply say, oh, I've been on the phone for like an hour. It's such a drag. So unpleasant. So here is also another slang. So holding up. Holding up is so you are hanging in there with no signs of showing that you are falling. How are you holding up? So if someone asks you like, oh, how are you holding up? How are you holding up? It just simply means they want, how are you coping? For example, you had a job loss. How are you dealing with this difficult situation? Yeah, so if someone were to ask you, oh, hey, how are you holding up? It means, how are you coping? How are you dealing with this super hard, difficult situation? So for example, the difficult situation is probably a job loss, for instance. So you've been at the job for so many years, like 10 years, but all of a sudden, because of the recession, you got laid off or fired. So that is a very difficult situation. And probably one of your friends and family would ask you, hey, I heard about your job loss. So how are you holding up? Means, how are you coping? How are you dealing with this? So how do you respond to this question? So honestly, as you can, if you're feeling down, you could simply say, yeah, it's horrible. I'm feeling really down. Or you could also say, oh yeah, it's very difficult, but I'm really hanging in there. So it's very difficult. This job for like 10 whole years, but just I've been at this job for 10 whole years. I thought I was getting promoted, but unfortunately, because of the recession, he's had to let us go. And that is it. Thank you so much for joining me to learn some English. And don't forget to connect with me on all my other social media accounts. I have my private Facebook group, so you're welcome to join there. I also have my Instagram as well. And that is it for today. I hope you really enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.